Ever since I was young, I've always loved fashion and looking at different trends from today's now and different centuries long ago. Today I'll be talking about fashion in the Victorian Britain era. After reading several articles about the history of fashion in Victorian Britain, I will share with everyone what I have learned. I will be informing you about the history of fashion in Victorian Britain, such as how much money people would spend on clothes, how Queen Victoria had a big fashion influence, and the social status. So let's get started. Families in the Victorian Britain era would spend a lot of money on clothes each season. From the article The Cost of a Season, it shares that the cost of fitting out a young lady for a whole season might easily cost 500 euros for a well-to-do family. This explains that just for one season, families would spend a lot of money on clothes just to stay in the trends and to make the family look wealthy. Another point is from also the same article, The Cost of a Season, it also explains that some paid 15,000 euros, close to $500,000 American dollars in today's currency, on clothes. This also explains how much money people would spend on clothes during that era. Families would spend a lot of money on clothes just for social status and to make their family look wealthy and to show how much money the family had. Now that we have covered how much money families would spend on clothes, let's discuss how Queen Victoria had a big influence on fashion during this era. Queen Victoria had a big influence on fashion during the Victorian era. Queen Victoria's personal style helped set the tone for the trends during this era. People would even watch everything that she wore just to stay up to the trends and would copy her off of her outfits and her dresses just to stay in the trend and to look more wealthy. In the article Queen Victoria's Influence on Fashion Trends, it explains that Queen Victoria's reign had a significant influence on fashion trends that still resonate today. A lot of the fashion that Queen Victoria would wear also resonates today and still is a big trend now. For example, she wore a white wedding dress to her wedding, and after she wore that white wedding dress, everyone started wearing white wedding dresses, and that still goes on today. Let's move on to the final point. The fashion trends people wore could determine their social status. Families with the nicest fabrics and up to all the trends were considered a higher up in the social status and a part of the upper class. This shows that people during this time would spend a lot more money and a lot more time thinking about how their clothes looked and what fabrics they used just to be a part of the higher up of the social status, and it also determined the nicer the fabric, how much you had, how higher up you were in the class. In the article 5 over-the-top fashion trends from the Victorian era, it explains that hands could tell you a lot about someone's position in the social hierarchy, and having soft, slender, and white hands was considered a sign of resentment. This explains that people would wear gloves to cover their hands just to hide what class they were a part of, either that was the lower class or the upper class. Now that I have explained all the points, let's move on. In conclusion, fashion in the Victorian era was a big deal to the families. The amount of money families would spend on clothes for a season was a lot, just for families to stay up to the trends. Queen Victoria was a huge fashion influence during this era, so much where people would watch everything that she would wear. The fashion trends and fabrics people wore during this era would determine what social class they were a part of during this time period. Ever since I was a kid, I've loved looking at fashion trends. Now looking at the Victorian Britain fashion era, I think it is interesting how clothes can mean so much to families during this time, in this era.